Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome in to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Monday, January 25th. Hopefully everybody's had a fantastic weekend out there. It was NFL Conference Championship weekend. I'm recording this one throughout the day here, but Packers, Bucks going at it. Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills. Certainly seems like both of these games could go either way, but by the time you're listening to this, we'll know who will be playing in a couple of weeks in the Super Bowl. And honestly, I didn't think we were going to get here with the NFL. Coronavirus, everything going on. Just a shout out to everybody across the National Football League for being able to get in a season, full season. So here we are, though, Monday. We're talking baseball. This is the Baseball Podcast within GSMC. And we got a lot to discuss with you guys. The hot stove is finally starting to warm up. You know, we're trying to crank that oven all the way up to broil, and we're slowly but surely creeping up in temperature here. So we have more and more to discuss with you guys. But today's a great show. Unfortunately, we're going to start off in a bit of a somber tone, similar to 2020. 2021 strikes again here in the month of January, and unfortunately, we're going to start out with some condolences, but then we're going to transition into a bunch of signings, a handful of trades, and then quite a few rumors continue to come about out there. But as you guys have heard by now, Henry Aaron, or Hank Aaron, has passed away this past weekend or at the end of last week. And, man, this one is certainly a tough one, not only just for me, but for the entire baseball community. And I just need this to stop. I mean, this is the third one in the month of January already. 2 shows a week, 3 weeks in, so 3 out of the 6 shows that I've done with you guys, I've had to discuss something like this. And man, it just breaks my heart, especially because this one is just the top of the top when it comes to Major League Baseball. So Hank Aaron passes away in his sleep peacefully over the weekend, but this is just a tough pill to swallow, and I myself, only 32 years old, you know, I'm sure this isn't hitting me as hard as it is some of you guys out there listening to this, but I did want to dive into the career of Hank Aaron. Everybody knows he's one of the greatest, but I did just want to kind of remind you guys of some of the statistics, some of the accolades, because the consistency of his career is what I find to be most fascinating here in regards to his accomplishments. But Hank Aaron, of course, he was a Hall of Famer, a first ballot Hall of Famer. He finished 9 votes short of unanimous. And, you know, honestly, I don't know who those 9 guys were, but if they still have a Hall of Fame vote, that's a shame on you to Major League Baseball. If any of those 9 guys are still associated with the sport in any way, that's shame on you, Major League Baseball, and it's just another scar for the sport, because there's no way you could argue in any way, shape, or form that Henry Aaron shouldn't be a unanimous Hall of Famer and actually sound like a lick that you know what you're talking about. So if you are one of those 9 gentlemen or females, again, I think it's all gentlemen, but I don't want to assume here. If you're one of those 9, you should just hang up your baseball card, give away everything you've ever done for the sport. I don't care if you're one of the best writers in the history of writers. You're done. You're out of here. I'm never reading your stuff again, because it's an absolute embarrassment to the sport that Hank Aaron was not a unanimous Hall of Famer. And you could say this for a number of guys. I mean, Hank Aaron wasn't the only one. He got the most percentages of votes since Ty Cobb, and Ty Cobb was not a unanimous Hall of Famer. So just the fact that these people felt, oh, well, nobody's deserving of being a unanimous Hall of Famer. Just hang up your badge, give away your media pass, give away all of your baseball stuff. If you have any accolades on the wall, break them, then throw them in the trash, because I'm absolutely disgusted by each and every one of you. But diving in here to Hank's stats. He played for 23 seasons. 21 of them came with the Atlanta or Milwaukee Braves organization, and then he went back to Milwaukee late in his career when they were no longer the Braves, but the Brewers. So back and forth between Milwaukee and Atlanta for 20-some years. But I'm just going to run through some of his total numbers and then give you guys the rankings of each of these statistics, because they continue to just be absolutely fascinating. 23 years he played in just shy of 3,300 games, 3,298 games. Let's see here. I can't even fit all this stuff on the screen. I got to get it perfectly here. But 2,174 runs, 3,771 hits. He had 624 doubles. Of course, second all-time with 755 home runs, 2,297 RBIs, 240 steals, 1,402 walks to 1,383 strikeouts. He was a career .305 hitter, 6,856 total bases. I mean, the guy was just an absolute machine offensively year after year after year. And that's, the consistency, like I said, is the most impressive part, because he's only got one MVP award in his career, which also is absolutely stunning to me. I mean, the guy finished in the top 5. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different times, but was only able to win the award once. And that was in the 1957 season, where he hit .322 with 44 home runs and 132 RBIs. And again, for a guy who was the top of the food chain, the career leader in home runs for 20, 30 years with 755, his career high in home runs is 44. The guy never hit above 50 home runs in his entire career. I mean, Barry Bonds, everybody knows 73, but I think he had other years of 68, 66, a handful up there, obviously, when he got hot. But Hank Aaron's consistency is just absolutely astonishing here when you're reading through his statistics. I definitely want you guys to go to his baseball reference page and just look at the beauty of year after year. I mean, he finished in the top 15 of the MVP voting every year from 1955 all the way through 1973. He had 19 straight seasons where the guy was an MVP candidate. I mean, we're talking LeBron James here, where we're going, man, this guy's just so good. He hit 280 this year. That's below his standards, so he's not going to win it, but he's still going to be put into that category. It is just crazy. And to that point, as I'm, looking at my notes here, kind of discussing some of the accolades that I wrote down for his career, he had 19 years in a row with at least 24 home runs. And this is a record by a number of years. And this took place through, let's see here, 1955 all the way through 1973. He had at least 24 home runs throughout that span. And in 1964 is when he had 24 home runs, but 19 years in a row. The next two gentlemen who are the closest to that record are Barry Bonds and Babe Ruth, who were able to do it for 15 years. So Henry, for 19 straight seasons, hit at least 24 home runs. That obviously makes him the king in that category. He's got 2 batting titles. 1956, which was the year prior to winning the MVP. He hit .328 that year to win the title in the National League. And then in 1959, he hit .355 over the course of 154 games to win the batting title. He is also a 3-time Gold Glove Award winner. He won it 3 straight years in age 24, 25, and 26 seasons, 58, 59, and 60. He won those Gold Gloves, as well as All-Star games. And this was another fascinating category or stat that I had found out while doing some research, but he leads everybody all time with 25 All-Star games. but only 21 seasons as an All-Star. Now, that's a record as well, 21 years. He literally only missed his rookie year, in which he finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting, and then his final season in 1976. So 21 out of 23 years an All-Star, but apparently way back in the 50s and 60s, they would have multiple All-Star games per season. So that's where we get the 25 All-Star appearances over the course of 21 years. And man, that is just absolutely extraordinary. So here's where he ranks all time in regards to categories. He is 4th all time in runs, 3rd all time in hits, 13th all time in doubles, 27th all time in walks. He's 7th all time in times on base. He's 1st all time in extra base hits, so home runs, doubles, triples, still 1st all time. He's 4th in sacrifice flies all time. He's 4th in intentional walks all time. 1st in total bases, and of course 2nd in home runs, and the leader as well in RBIs. So number 1 all time in RBIs, total bases, extra base hits, and then 2nd in home runs, which obviously everybody knows with Barry Bonds taking that crown away from him 20 to 30 years later. But he is one of 3 players ever to finish with over 2,000 runs scored and 2,000 RBIs. The other 2 guys there are Babe Ruth and Alex Rodriguez. He's 5th all-time in career WAR, or wins above replacement. The order is number 1, Barry Bonds, number 2, Babe Ruth, number 3, Willie Mays, number 4, Ty Cobb, and then number 5, Hank Aaron in all-time WAR. And just, again, the consistency and the WAR is something to look at here because, of course, this is kind of like a retroactive statistic, but for the king of consistency, for looking at consecutive seasons with at least 4+ wins above replacement, he is 1st all-time with 19. Now, the gentleman in 2nd, last name Speaker, I don't even know Mr. Speaker, but he played from 1909 through 1926. He had 18 in a row. Then you get to Alex Rodriguez at 16, Greg Maddux and Willie Mays at 15 at 4 wins above replacement. You then go to at least 5 wins above replacement. Hank Aaron is first once again with 17. You have Mr. Speaker at 15 right below him. Michael Jack Schmidt at 14 below that. Then you got Ty Cobb and Willie Mays, each with 13. And then taking it a step even further, consecutive seasons with 6+ wins above replacement. Hank Aaron still in the lead with 15 straight seasons. Next on that list is Willie Mays with 13 and Lou Gehrig with 12. And then you have Barry Bonds and Walter Johnson with 10 straight each. So when you look at consistency, from 1955 through 1973, Aaron had at least a 4+ WAR. You go to 5, it takes it down to 71. You go to 6, and it takes it down to 69. So from 1955 through 1969, he had at least 6+ wins above replacements. And this encompasses the entirety of the game, offensively, defensively, base running, whatever it may be. So Hank Aaron, certainly that lets you know that he was the best of the best at the top of that level. Another fascinating stat here is comparing him in regards to home runs and WAR up until age 30 and then after age 30. Because age 30, if you look at some other guys comparatively speaking, that's when things tend to slow down a little bit for them. But Hank Aaron was just as good, if not better, after the age of 30. I mean, just looking at some names here, up until the age of 30, Alex Rodriguez, 464 home runs with an 85 WAR. After age 30, 232 home runs, a 35 WAR. Ken Griffey Jr., up to age 30, 438 home runs, a 76 WAR. You're looking at Albert Pujols, 408 home runs, an 81 WAR. Those two guys after the age of 30, Griffey only hit 192 home runs and had a 7.6 WAR. So it went from 76 to 7.6. And then Albert Pujols, 254 home runs, but only a 19.4 wins above replacement. And now when we look at Hank Aaron, you find yourself 366 home runs in an 80.7 WAR up until his age 30. And then after his age 30 season, he had 389 home runs, so more home runs than before age 30, and also a 62.4 wins above replacement. So slightly below, but it just goes to show you that his defense never faltered, his base running never faltered, and he continued to just produce at an astronomical level through the entirety of his career. Before the age of 30, which is typically where your prime is, and then after the age of 30, just refused to slow down. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Hank Aaron. Of course, he dealt with a ton of racism, a ton of social injustice during his time. Jackie Robinson played at the professional level, but Hank Aaron went up through the minors, and there was discussion during his time in the Sally League or the South Alabama League, in Jacksonville and Alabama, about how even at home games he was chastised, he was ridiculed, he was just screamed at, thrown at. They called him all types of names that I can't repeat on here. He also is said to receive up to 3,000 letters per day of hate mail, just tough stuff that certainly you guys should look into, and how he was able to overcome and perform on the field. Just a tremendous story. And the racism was large when he was back, but he was able to overcome and become, obviously, if not the best player of all time, certainly in that conversation of top 3 or top 5 across the board historically. So condolences go out to the entire Aaron family. Again, here from the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm getting sick of kind of doing these particular segments with you guys, but I do love remembering the greatness of these gentlemen's careers and ultimately the success that they had. But unfortunately, Hank Aaron has passed away. The home run king for the longest time has moved on to a better place, and he's been welcomed in upstairs and hopefully is resting in peace moving forward. But, man, just a tough weekend, another tough day for the game of baseball here. But that'll do it for the first segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside here for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we'll get into a handful of signings that have taken place over the weekend. So, not yet the top dogs, but we're seeing a lot more movement on the free agent market. So, stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It's Monday, January 25th. Hopefully everybody's doing great out there. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, Amazon Podcasts. What else is going on out there? I know you guys are probably yelling at the radio or the phone saying, hey, I'm on Google Play, or whatever's going on. But take a brief moment, hit like, hit subscribe, rate and review, leave us a comment, as well as be a friend, tell a friend. To quote my buddy Pat McAfee out there, that helps us go a long way to spreading the word, continuing to grow, as we're less than a month away from spring training. It's kind of fascinating to think the World Series was a handful of months ago, and here we are already transitioning into February while this hot stove is starting to pick up here. So check that out, as well as head to social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, GSMC Baseball Podcast We'll keep you guys up to date on everything going on out there in the baseball world. Facebook, like I mentioned, there's also the GSMC Podcast Network pages. LinkedIn, you can check them out. Keep you guys up to date on everything you need to know, but a fantastic network here. And check out those social media pages. But diving in here to the signings that are taking place in the offseason, I need to put a little bit of asterisks on this first conversation because on Thursday, I told you guys that it was reported that Michael Brantley was signing with the Toronto Blue Jays to join his buddy George Springer up there. They're good friends. They got the same agents. Well, it came out a few hours after I recorded the podcast that pretty much Brantley was headed back to Houston. So that's the fun of free agency, right? People throw it out there. I think Brantley did have an offer, maybe a verbal agreement type of thing with the Blue Jays. And then the Astros came calling back, probably up their offer. He was able to leverage the Blue Jays offer with Houston, going back and forth. I mean, you have the international tax there, the dollars up north compared to Texas, state income, all that good stuff comes into consideration. And we certainly saw as Michael Brantley officially has signed a 2-year, $32 million deal with the Houston Astros. So combine that on top of his 2-year deal he originally had. You're looking at 4 years, 60 to 70 million total for Michael Brantley, and that's a nice little career stint down there in Houston. So it was certainly a surprise to me. I gave an aw shucks when I heard he was going back to Houston because I was like, man, I lied to the people of the GSMC baseball podcast. But there were conversations, but ultimately Brantley's ended up back in Houston. And the guy's been fantastic down there in Houston. I mean, he's got OPS plus marks that are up there with his previous time there in Cleveland. So he's a very good hitter, right around the 300 mark, and I certainly see why Houston would bring him back because they had lost Springer, they lost Reddick, and if they lost Brantley, they were going to lose their entire starting outfield. So this certainly helps the Astros get back into that AL West conversation and the playoff conversation there as well because that division is very winnable with the way things have shaken out this offseason and the moves teams have made thus far. But the Astros made an additional move over the weekend. They signed catcher Jason Castro to a 2-year, $7 million deal. 34-year-old veteran. He split time in 2020 between the Angels and the Padres. He's been in the league for, 13, 14 years now. He's somewhat below average catcher, but people like throwing to him. I've actually had the pleasure of meeting Castro during his time with the Twins. A really good guy. The pitchers love connecting with him. And, pairing him with Martin Maldonado, I believe is a fantastic way to go down there for Houston. And 2 years at $3.5 million a pop, it certainly looks like a nice signing for the Astros. But guys are going to like throwing to him. But Houston brings back two guys, or brings back Brantley, and then brings in Castro to try to compete for that AL West job here moving forward. So what else do we have here moving across the board? The Miami Marlins, they signed pitcher Anthony Bass to a 2-year, $5 million deal. There is a club option for 2023. And Bass, he's bounced around. He has a very interesting career. He spent 5 seasons between the Padres and the Rangers. Then he went over to Japan professionally. Came back in 2017 on a minor league deal with the Angels. He bounced around to the Cubs, then the Reds, the Mariners, last year with the Blue Jays. And this is what makes, the 2-year commitment a little bit surprising. But his 62.3% ground ball rate, was 4th best amongst all pitchers who threw 20 innings. So the guy was very good for the Blue Jays last year when he threw. He's increasingly relying on his slider that only allowed 6 total hits off of that pitch in 2020. So the guy, he's not going to miss a ton of bats. He's a little bit all over the zone. He's kind of major league average in a bunch of different categories. But a veteran relief pitcher down there in Miami to kind of bring along that younger pitching staff that showed a ton of promise last year, I think is a solid move for them. And $2.5 million a year in Miami, what the heck? Maybe the guy continues to find himself and becomes a solid signing for the Fish here in 2021. Bouncing out now to the San Diego Padres. Can't go more than a couple of days here without discussing San Diego and the moves they're making, but they re-signed Jurrikson Profar. He's an infielder, outfielder, utility guy for them. They signed him to a 3-year, $21 million deal. Now, of course, this isn't going to make the waves that Snell, Darvish, or Musgrove did over the past couple of weeks. But, I mean, Profar does have a couple of 20 home run seasons to his resume with the Rangers and the A's. He's a switch hitter. He can play as many as 5 positions. He fielded in left field when Tommy Pham went down. They have Hyung-Sung Kim and Cronenworth in the mix as well for the infield. So, Profar, where does he pencil in every day? I don't think he does. But this guy is a fantastic option coming off the bench, pitch hitting late, with the pitchers hitting again this year, pinch hitting, double switches defensively, being able to use him all around the infield, all around the outfield. It makes this team just as, deep here, and certainly very impressive for the Padres to bring him back at about $7 million a year for the next 3 years here. So the Padres keep getting better, just little by little, incrementally. It's been fun to watch. But next up, we have the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox have made a couple of different moves here. Kiki Hernandez was the first domino to fall. He got a 2-year, $14 million deal. So his market and Profar's market were almost identical. San Diego, and they understand Profar. He's been in the organization. So Kiki, he goes over to Boston for kind of the same price tag, basically. But Kiki's he's a very entertaining guy. Of course, he's been with the Dodgers for the past 6 seasons. He's got a reputation as one of the most versatile players in the game. He's played at least, 5-6 positions. He's really good against left-handed pitching in his career. A little bit to be desired against righties, but very good against lefties. And essentially there in Boston, he's going to replace Brock Holt moving forward, as well as Boston, who recently, in a trade we'll discuss in the next segment with the Phillies, have a brief hole that Kiki can, help fill for the next couple of years. So Hernandez, he's been really good, really versatile, and this certainly is a Chaim Bloom type of player where you can utilize him in multiple positions. You can utilize him in different areas in the lineup, 2-hole, 6-hole, leadoff, 8-hole, wherever you want to bounce him around. He can perform for you there as well. So this certainly feels like a Chaim Bloom signing here and getting the ball rolling for the Boston Red Sox. And they made an additional move here where they signed pitcher Garrett Richards to a 1-year, $10 million contract. There is an option for 2022 on both sides of things. So Richards, he had a breakout back in 2014, 2015, had a couple of nice years, but he's been plagued with injuries since, only going just about 200 total innings over the past 5 years. But when he does stay healthy, the guy is one of the top relievers or top starters in all of baseball. I mean, if you go to his StatCast page, he's got an elite fastball. He's got an elite curveball according to the spin rates. The velocity is still there at just over 95 for the heater. So if this guy can stay healthy, this is another signing where Bloom and the Red Sox are certainly going to look like geniuses when it comes out. But the Red Sox have a ton of questions in their rotation. They hope to get Chris Sale back sooner than later. Eduardo Rodriguez dealing with the COVID-19 issues. They got Martin Perez back that we spoke about last week. Nathan Eovaldi coming off of some injuries in the past. But, they are certainly hoping that Garrett Richards can come in and kind of fill that number 2, number 3 spot and be a stalwart in their rotation, because this team is going to need innings. That's what we talked about with Perez. They like the fact that he stayed healthy, made his starts, and if they can get Sale back, you get Richards at the top of his game. The Red Sox underlying issues here may have improved just a little bit. So a fascinating move for the Red Sox as they try to compete, but they're not in the ballpark of the Blue Jays, the Yankees, and then of course the Rays continue to churn out talent year in and year out. The last couple of signings to discuss here, we have the Washington Nationals bringing back Ryan Zimmerman. Zimmerman, of course, sat out the 2020 season due to the coronavirus. He had opted out at that particular time. It was stated that he had hoped to play again in 2021 at this point, and he's a career national. He's only ever been in that organization. He turned 36 this past September, so this will be his age 36 season. He was the first pick after the franchise relocated from Montreal, and he's been very good for them. A career .280 hitter, 270 home runs, former third baseman, now first baseman. Of course, there's a bit of a tricky situation here with the Nationals recently acquiring Josh Bell from first base and the lack of the DH right now. So Zimmerman could platoon with Bell. Bell's a left-handed hitter, much better from the left side than he is from the right side. And meanwhile, Zimmerman from the right side has crushed lefties throughout that, time in his career. So that could be a nice little platoon there. Plus, it's come out that it's only a $1 million contract for 1 year. So it's not like even if Zimmerman doesn't play, they're going to be burning a lot of money there. So now that the Nationals have Bell and Zimmerman at first base, they got some depth if an injury were to occur or even some issues if somebody were to go in a slump, kind of give them a break. But I like this signing by the Nationals, kind of taking care of their own, bringing Ryan Zimmerman back. And man, has he been a Philly killer. As a Phillies fan, I was not happy to see this one because I know at some point, he's gonna pop one, and it's gonna be absolutely frustrating for the Phillies fans. So next on the list here, we have the Minnesota Twins make a move. They actually signed left-handed pitcher J.A. Happ to a 1-year contract. It'll be a 1-year deal worth $8 million. Happ, he was one of the few lefties available on the market. Jose Quintana had recently signed. Now Happ, there were rumors of him being back to the Yankees or Blue Jays or whoever it is. But I like this signing from Minnesota. In 9 starts last year for the Yankees, Happ had a 3.47 ERA, which, again, not fantastic, but certainly steady as she goes for a guy on the back 9 of his career. Happ came up with the Phillies, has bounced around ever since, but, now 38 years old, doesn't miss a ton of bats, but still a nice signing for the Twins, who are looking for depth in their rotation. They're looking for help on the starting pitching side. They're still interested in guys on the market. But again, the loss of Jaco DeRizzi and the loss of Rich Hill certainly left openings. And you slot in Happ where Rich Hill was, and maybe it's not as big as a drop-off as people had kind of anticipated coming into this 2021 season. So the last signing to discuss here over the weekend, or the last handful of days, before we transition into our third segment where we talk about a number of trades and trade rumors currently brewing out there. But the Chicago Cubs, they made a move to bring in their second catcher. They traded their number 2 catcher out to the San Diego Padres because he was Yu Darvish's personal catcher, is the easiest way to communicate it. And, Wilson Contreras could potentially be on the market. So they signed catcher Austin Romine to a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. It'll be interesting to see, where he ends up, how much he contributes for them. But in 2019, he hit .281 for the Yankees in 72 games. Last year for the Tigers, he hit .238 in 37 games. So, he was hitting .291 through August and then took a foul ball off the knee and really struggled in the month of September. So the guy's a bit above average on the offensive side of things. Leaves a little bit to be desired defensively, as he's had a -4 defensive runs saved metrics and a -3.1 framing in 2020, according to those sabermetrics as well. But I like this move for the Cubs. Short-term deal, lower money, get a bit of offensive capability, and if you do move on from Contreras, you got a professional catcher still behind the dish here. So that wraps things up for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll step aside once again for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we're going to get into some trades. A big trade went down Sunday, a couple of other little ones in the past, but we're going to get you guys up to date on everything going on. So stick around, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, and thanks again for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Thanks again for listening, everyone. If you guys haven't checked out the other shows within the GSMC Podcast Network, do yourself a favor. Wherever you're listening to this, type in GSMC, and it's going to bring up about 20 different shows that you guys can choose from. I mentioned at the top of today's episode, we have the conference championships just taking place. So the Super Bowl's coming up. There's going to be a ton to discuss, talking about the matchups, who's got the advantage where. Of course, the NBA is back in action. My Philadelphia 76ers are atop the Eastern Conference thus far. Joel Embiid certainly looks like the MVP frontrunner early on, if not him. Then you have the Joker out with the Nuggets, who's up at the top of the list. You recently had the James Harden trade to the Nets. The big three with him, Durant, Irving, and the NHL. They're coming at you fast and furious. My Flyers, they were swept up in Boston during their 2-game series, as because of travel situations, they're playing mini 2-game series from pod to pod, town to town type of situations. And college basketball's coming at you. University of Michigan just had to shut down their athletic program for a couple of weeks due to COVID, and March Madness will be here in a couple of months. But if you're not into just sports and you're into other things, check out the Movies Podcast, or the books, or news, or yoga, or health and fitness. There's anything that you guys could be interested in out there, GSMC has a podcast for you to keep you guys up to date. So I like the health and fitness one. Sometimes they give you different recipes, things to eat, workouts to try, kind of keep you mentally focused, physically focused. As again, this COVID and this quarantine, you can kind of go two different ways when it comes to being locked in your house. But we're jumping back into baseball here on this podcast, hopping into segment number 3, where we're talking about the latest trades that have taken place over the weekend and over the past couple of days, with one recent big trade, not top of the list, but certainly somebody who could bring some value, and that's the Pittsburgh Pirates. They remain busy. We talked about Joe Musgrove. I'm going to bring that one up here again in just a moment, since we know a bit more of the return for each side and what they're getting back. But they also sent Josh Bell to the Nationals, and then in their latest move, this recent Sunday here, they agreed to a deal with the Yankees to send pitcher Jameson Taillon to New York in return for 4 minor leaguers. And we'll get into those guys in just a moment and kind of break down ultimately which way Pittsburgh's going here and what they're thinking. But I did want to talk a bit more about Jameson Taillon, for those of you who are not aware kind of his career and his trajectory. This is an underlying fantastic starting pitcher. He was drafted in 2010, number 2 overall by the Pirates. And the two gentlemen who went first and third in that draft were none other than Bryce Harper, recently signed $300+ million with the Phillies, and Manny Machado, went third that year. And, of course, he recently signed with the Padres after a fantastic run in Baltimore. So, squeezed in between two $300 million men is Jameson Taillon at that number 2 spot. And unfortunately for him, health has just been an issue thus far in his career. He first underwent a Tommy John surgery in 2014 during his time in the minor leagues there in Pittsburgh. He was able to bounce back after that, and then unfortunately had hernia surgery, which took him out for a number of years. He dealt with testicular cancer for a brief moment to miss some time, had to step away and deal with that, and then once again, at the end of the 2019 season, had his second Tommy John surgery. So 2 Tommy Johns on that right arm, the second coming in August of 2019. But because of the timing there, it does put him on track to return for the 2021 season and be back in the rotation. So, but when you look at this guy, and when he is healthy, he's been very good. I mean, again, you don't go number 2 overall in a draft without having fantastic type of stuff. And looking at his career ERA of 3.67 and his best season coming in 2018 when he was a full-time starter for the Pirates, he went 14-10 with a 3.2 ERA. He made 32 starts that year through 2 complete games. He had 1 shutout, 191 innings that year, 179 strikeouts to only 46 walks. So the strikeout to walk ratio there about 4-1, which is exactly what you're looking for. His sabermetrics, his underlying metrics are fantastic. Spin rate, stuff, quality, multiple pitches. So this guy, when healthy, is a top-of-the-line kind of front-end starter. I mean, I probably wouldn't put the ace connotation next to his name, although that's what he was in 2018, and then the start of 2019 as he started opening day for the Pirates that year. But in New York, you don't need him to be an ace-type starter. You have a guy making $350 million or right around it. That is your ace in New York City. So you pair these guys up once again. I'm obviously speaking about Garrett Cole, who was a teammate of Jameson Taillon's back in 2016 and 2017 with the Pirates, before Cole was shipped down to Houston and transitioned down there. So now the Yankees, this becomes very interesting because you're putting Taillon at the top of that list with Cole, as well as Corey Kluber, who they recently signed to that 1-year, $11 million deal. And now your top 3 at that rotation just got a lot more formidable if those 2 and 3 can stay healthy. Again, Kluber missing the last couple of years with injuries. Taillon missing the last couple of years with injuries. But based on all the information the Yankees are receiving and what they were visually seeing for Kluber's workout, this is a deal that is, low risk, kind of high reward for them because of the package they gave up wasn't to the level of top guys. But from the staying with the Yankees perspective, I mean, you mix in a lefty, Jordan Montgomery, could potentially be in the rotation, although he's coming off a Tommy John from 2018, still trying to find his footing. You have Devay Garcia, Clark Schmidt, a couple of youngsters in there trying to find their way, and then former All-Star Luis Severino, who's coming off a Tommy John surgery from last year. So can Severino get back in time to potentially be a mid-year addition to the Yankees, almost like a trade acquisition for them? And with this rotation now of Cole, Taillon, Kluber, Severino, and whoever at that number 5 spot, could this put them in consideration with the Chicago White Sox as the best team in the American League? I certainly think it has them at the top of the American League East now, based on this conversation. I mean, we've talked about the move the Blue Jays have made. The Rays won the division, made the World Series, but I think they've gotten a bit worse, and I think the Yankees have gotten better this offseason. So I would argue that the Yankees are now the team to beat in the American League East after this move, and ultimately right up there with the White Sox as somebody who could win the American League. Again, it comes down to the postseason, the pitching, but I think the Yankees got better on Sunday evening here with the acquisition of Jameson Taillon. Now, from the Pirates' perspective of things, they add 4 more prospects. And again, we'll get to Musgrove and what they got for him. But for Taillon, they add 4 prospects, and 3 of them being top 30 prospects from the Yankees organization. these four guys that they're bringing back. First, we have Miguel Yajure, Yajure, Yajure. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but he's a 22-year-old Venezuelan who made his big league debut this past season, where he had a 1.29 ERA in 3 relief appearances. I think it was a total of 7 innings. So a nice arm there, who's major league ready, but still very young for the Pittsburgh Pirates to build around moving forward. And then the other guys are more so in the minor leagues. And Yajure was the number 15th rated prospect for the Yankees. And if you go, moving forward here, Roansy, Roansy Contreras, he's a 21-year-old from the Dominican Republic. He's a pitcher for them as well. He went 16-11 over the course of 3 minor league seasons, 3.25 ERA. He has yet to crack the big leagues, but after the 2019 season, he was ranked as the number 8 prospect for the Yankees. Updated rankings now have him as number 19. Of course, there were no minor leagues this past year, so I'm not exactly sure how they went about kind of manipulating those rankings during the offseason. But Contreras, he showed promise, 21 years old. Yajure, 22. Both of them very close to Major League ready. Both of them showing quality stuff for the Pirates. You have Cannon Smith is the next gentleman. He is the number 21 ranked prospect from the Yankees. He is an offensive player and outfielder. He hit .280 with 50 doubles, 4 triples, 19 homers over the course of 3 minor league seasons. 21-year-old. So he will go to Pittsburgh, provide them with some organizational depth. And then Michael Escotto, who is a shortstop, who is not on the prospects list, but certainly kind of a lottery ticket there for the Pirates that they can hopefully build around when it comes to this next wave of talent that the Pirates are adding. Because essentially they decided, hey, we're not going to be competitive over the next 2 to 3 years, which means we got to get Talion out of here, we got to get Musgrove out of here, and we got to get Bell out of here to get 4 lottery tickets there. They got 5 lottery tickets from the Musgrove deal. Let's touch on that here now. I spoke to you guys about Musgrove going to San Diego. Well, it was a 3-team deal that sent left-handed pitcher Joey Lachusi to the New York Mets. And then the Pirates got the following 5 gentlemen. They got catcher Endy Rodriguez, right-handed pitcher David Bednar, right-handed pitcher Drake Fellows, left-handed pitcher Omar Cruz, and center fielder Hudson Head. So in these 2 deals alone for Musgrave and Talion, the Pirates have added, 5-6 arms as well as 4 positional guys. So they get a total of 9 or 10 guys to try to refill the ranks coming up. Now, it'll be interesting to see where all these guys are assigned to at the minor league level. We've had a bit more clarity when it comes to 2021 and what's going to happen at the minor league level now that everything has kind of been finalized. But truly a bit left unknown there in regards to association and ultimately finalizing rankings. But the Pirates get rid of some top guys who are going to help the teams they're going to, but if they were in Pittsburgh, not going to help them win. So I think it's a nice move by the organization. I like the rebuild aspect that they're trying to do there out in Pittsburgh. So those were the 2 biggest deals over the past week or so. The Pirates involved with both of them. There were a couple here, kind of below the scenes, kind of behind the curtain, lower level type deals. I touched on the Red Sox adding Kiki Hernandez. Well, I think this was in conjunction with them trading C.J. Chatham to the Philadelphia Phillies for a player to be named later. Chatham was the Red Sox 15th ranked prospect. He's a shortstop, second baseman, infielder. He was at the AAA level in 2019, part of the taxi squad in 2020. So he was kind of right on the cusp there. But if you add Hernandez, that certainly would block Chatham and not allow him to bring the amount of value that they were looking for. So they move on with Chatham, kind of get a lottery ticket underneath him, add Hernandez at the top level, and you're good to go there, according to Chaim Bloom. And then from the Phillies' perspective, they're still in need of a shortstop. They don't bring back Gregorius or sign Simmons or anybody else on the market. I think Chatham may get a look as he was added to the 40-man roster. But the last 2 trades to discuss with you guys out there were both made by the Cincinnati Reds, and they were both for bullpen additional pieces. First off, they made a trade with the Houston Astros for left-hander Cieno Perez. as Perez will go from Houston to the Reds. Like I mentioned, left-handed guy out in the bullpen there, something the Reds need to continue to stabilize those late innings. They sent catcher Luke Berryhill back to Houston. Now, I talked to you guys about how Houston signed Castro to a 2-year deal, but Berryhill could filter in behind him in the organizational depth chart, giving him a little bit of leeway to kind of find his footing and ultimately maybe in a couple of years move on from there. But the additional trade that the Reds made was with the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays traded right-handed pitcher Hector Perez to the Cincinnati Reds for a player to be named later. So the Reds make 2 moves, both in the bullpen side of things, one for a lefty Perez, one for a righty Perez, which will be fascinating for you guys there in Cincinnati to remember the difference between the two. But I like what Cincinnati's doing. I like where their head's at offensively. They've kept their guys together. They moved on from starting pitching. Trevor Bauer is going to sign somewhere else. Sonny Gray's been on the market. Luis Castillo was rumored to the Yankees before ultimately they went to Italian. So if they keep those guys, add to the bullpen, I think the Reds could sneak up once again on some guys and make a playoff push in 2021. But those were all the completed trades that were made. Of course, we still have some rumors out there. Josh Hader still could be available, listening to deals in Milwaukee. Chris Bryant for the Cubs. Wilson Contreras for the Cubs. So we could see some action still between now and the start of the regular season or even spring training in a month or so. But the Yankees make the big move of the weekend, bringing in Jameson Taillon to kind of fortify that starting rotation. And I like the deal that was made there between both clubs. But that'll wrap things up for the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside one last time here for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we'll keep you guys up to date with all the latest rumors, news, and notes going on out there. Like I said, things are starting to heat up, and maybe we'll get a couple of big fish to sign here over the course of the next week. So stick around, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thanks again for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Appreciate you guys tuning in today. This is the fourth and final segment, so before we dive in, I'll ask you one more time. Please rate and review the podcast. Share us with your friend. Head to social media, as well as check out all the other shows within the podcast network. You're going to find something you guys like on there. I'm absolutely sure of it. So do yourself a favor, check those out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Championship weekend continues on here. As I'm recording on Sunday, we got a good one between Tampa and Green Bay happening, followed by a nightcap with Buffalo and Kansas City. So the Super Bowl is going to be a fantastic matchup here moving forward. But let's dive into segment number 4. We're talking news, notes, rumors, everything going on across Major League Baseball. We got a ton to discuss, bouncing all around. I'm going to try to keep this entertaining for you guys, try to keep you updated. So I just talked about some trade rumors happening there in segment number 3. I mentioned Chris Bryant. Well, here late Sunday evening, it's been reported that the Cubs and Blue Jays are actually in talks involving Chris Bryant as well as Hendricks moving forward here. So Bryant we've known to be on the block, but Hendricks being added, Kyle Hendricks, is raising some eyebrows. What could Toronto give up Is there any truth to this? Well, it was confirmed by Scott Mitchell of TSN. He replied yes to a fan who asked him if there was any truth to this. So, it could be nothing more than Toronto just doing due diligence, but I think when you get to this point, there's certainly going to be conversation. Now, with the third baseman Bryant going to Toronto, does this mean that Vlad Guerrero Jr. could be in the deal coming back? I certainly don't think Toronto would want to send Vladdy out of town. Hendricks, though, has a team-friendly contract. He's got 3 years remaining of control, so the price is certainly going to be higher than if it were just to be Chris Bryant, who's due to be a free agent after next offseason. So this is where I think you kind of get into almost a rental type piece, and now you're having the conversation of, hey, this may be a blockbuster type of deal potentially brewing here between the Blue Jays and Cubs. And with the Yankees adding Talion just earlier today, it's certainly fascinating to see that Toronto could answer with the likes of Hendricks and Bryant being brought up there to Toronto. So continuing to wait out the Blue Jays. They've been involved in every big name this offseason. They've landed one or two with Springer and some other guys. They've made moves in the bullpen. So let's wait and see if they pull that final trigger and go Chris Bryant and Kyle Hendricks. The San Francisco Giants, they are interested in some outfield help, and apparently they've cornered it down to two candidates. Corner it there. You see what I did? Outfield, corner, outfield. Well, Eddie Rosario and Jackie Bradley Jr. are the two guys that they are very interested in. JBJ would certainly be an upgrade defensively. He would particularly play center field with the Giants, but could move to the corner depending on how things shake out. Eddie Rosario, of course, he's a left-handed bat, a better offensive player than Jackie Bradley Jr. He's been above average defensively in left field, so, not a schmuck out there by any means, but Bradley is known to be the better defensive player out of the two. So either one of them would give them some flexibility in the outfield. Would probably push Alex Dickerson to the bench and make him the fourth outfield position, a little bit more of a versatility role for Dickerson. But look to the Giants to potentially add either Eddie Rosario or Jackie Bradley Jr. here in the next couple of days, potentially even this week, as they're looking to make some moves here before February comes around. Next, we have sources saying that Brad Hand's decision in free agency could be coming sooner than later. There are multiple teams interested. John Heyman, he's reported that the Nationals are a front runner in his particular opinion. You also have the Blue Jays, the Mets, the Angels, the Dodgers. The Phillies and Braves are rumored to kind of be circling in the distance as well. They need some bullpen help. So, that's 5, 6, 7 guys interested in Hand. This, of course, after Cleveland declined his $10 million option and giving him $1 million to go away. So it makes him a free agent. He led the major leagues with 16 saves last year, and since 2016 has been absolutely fantastic. So whoever Hand signs with, I think you're looking at a 2, 3, 4-year deal. Probably not to the level that Liam Hendricks got, but I do think it's going to be for a few more dollars than you guys are anticipating out there, because supply and demand, right? The more demand we have for Brad Hand, the better deal he's going to get. And with 5, 6 teams currently in the running, one of them is going to have to pony up here a few extra dollars to get this done. Next, we have the Miami Marlins. They're kicking the tires here on Santander. Anthony Santander from the Baltimore Orioles. Now they would have to trade for Santander because he's in the final year of arbitration. And it was said that Baltimore actually offered a deferred salary in arbitration for the final year, deferring 25% to future payments. Now, Santander didn't agree to that, which is why they're headed for arbitration here. But he was very good in 2020. He hit .261, 11 home runs, 32 RBIs in 37 games. The 26-year-old right fielder was very good for them. So I like this move by the Marlins. This would be an upgrade for them in the outfield. The thoughts for Miami is Rosario or Duvall or JBJ, again, would be a little bit expensive for what they're trying to spend down there in Miami. So they're looking more on the trade side of things to potentially add a cost-efficient outfielder here moving forward. So it'll be fascinating to see if anything materializes there. But it certainly seems like the Marlins are interested in adding an outfield piece moving forward here. An update on the Trevor Bauer sweepstakes. What's going on? Let's see here. We have the New York Mets and the LA Angels. Reports have those two as the favorites and front runners for Trevor Bauer. The Angels reportedly more in front of the Mets just due to the Mets and what's taken place there in the offseason. They've been very active, but Trevor Bauer, it's been discussed that the Mets are looking for a shorter-term deal, and the Angels could potentially be looking more long-term. It's been said Bauer is open to any type of contract structure. He's willing to negotiate back and forth, but I do find it a bit fascinating if he's willing to go more short-term, high money. I would think that would bring the Dodgers back into things and bring them very much into play to adding somebody like Trevor Bauer. And if you're Bauer and you're looking short-term, 2 to 3 years, I mean, yes, the Mets have made some moves, but I certainly don't think they're in the ballpark of the LA Dodgers. And if you're getting comparative money there, you would probably head to L.A. You would enjoy the Hollywood lifestyle. The guy went to UCLA. He's a California kid. And as well as winning World Series and being in the playoffs year after year, I think would be a bit more of an eye-opener for him. So that's where I think the Angels are ultimately going to win out with the longevity as well as the money that they're willing to throw at Trevor Bauer. But it's certainly fascinating because more and more teams are kind of, wading in the water to see ultimately which direction he decides to go here. Next, the Toronto Blue Jays. They're still looking for starting pitching. They're eyeing James Paxton here, potentially on the starting side. Moving on from the New York Yankees after they made a handful of moves. You also have them in touch with shortstop Andrelton Simmons. So the Blue Jays currently have Bo Bichette at shortstop, but of course, they could be willing to relocate Bichette around the infield. They were runners-up for Francisco Lindor, so they're not shying away from that shortstop conversation. We all know that. So would they bring in Simmons? I'm not sure on a short-term deal, 1-2 year deal, which I think is kind of where the market is for Simmons. I don't know if that would benefit Bichette to move him over to second base, but it certainly seems like the Blue Jays are not done here. Again, on Kyle Hendricks and Chris Bryant, as well as talking to Paxton, talking to Simmons. So they're looking for infield help in Toronto as well as starting pitching, and all of these names are certainly aligning with those values. We have Jake Odorizzi. Multiple teams interested in starting pitcher Jake Odorizzi with the Angels, the Giants, the Blue Jays again, the Twins, the Red Sox, all clubs in the mix. I mean, that's 5 or 6 guys. Odorizzi, he dealt with injuries in 2020. Certainly much better in the years prior to that. He was even an all-star in 2019 with a 3.51 ERA. He opted to take the Twins' qualifying offer at that point instead of testing the market. He may have found a better deal there at the market on that side of things had he walked and not waited for his injury-plagued season. But it'll be fascinating to see where he ends up. Again, the Angels, I think they're waiting on Trevor Bauer to see which direction they go there. You have the Giants, the Blue Jays, Paxton, Hendricks. I mean, they're in on every starter. And, of course, the Twins still trying to improve and hang around there with that AL Central, and the White Sox certainly looking like the team to beat here. Next on the list, we have some JT Realmuto chatter. We talked about Trevor Bauer and potentially where he could end up, but JT Realmuto, his market seemed to be shrinking, but now it is stated that the Braves are, quote, circling catcher JT Realmuto. You know, everybody's wondered if they're seriously interested in adding Realmuto or if they're just trying to drive up the price for the Phillies, a divisional foe, to kind of give more money and look at what they're doing there. But, you know, John Heyman of MLB recently stated that if they bring in Realmuto, they could look to trade Travis d'Arnaud, who was good for them this past offseason. Possible destinations for Arnaud, there's rumored to be the Angels, the Blue Jays, who's owed $8 million this year in the final year of a 2-year deal. The Angels' new general manager, Maniason, is very familiar with d'Arnaud, so there could be a move to be had there. But, you know, really people are saying that they do not kind of believe the Braves are a true threat because the contract that was offered to JT from the Phillies side of things is rumored to be right around $110 million. Now, this is in the 5-year range, and we've seen a couple of other top free agents get that 6th year. DJ LeMahieu got it from the Yankees. Springer got it from the Blue Jays. And it kind of makes you think Real Muto would look to match that for the offseason, and now the market's been playing out. But playing a different position at catcher as opposed to second base or outfield certainly takes a bit more of a physical toll on the body, which is why I think the Phillies are not willing to go above that 5th year. And personally, in my opinion, 4 years would be the ideal choice for Real Muto. But if you have to go 5 years, 110, again, you're looking at $22 million a year, which is where I think the market is, and I think it's where it should be for Real Muto. So I don't think that's a lowball offer at all. I just think that's not as high as Real Muto was thinking, where he was kind of, looking at 6 and 150, right where Springer was getting, and 5 and 110 would be a disappointment from his side. But I believe that's what the market dictates, and ultimately I think they get him at about 115 just to make him happy back in Philadelphia, because Real Muto in a Braves uniform would certainly be frustrating for every single Phillies fan out there. Justin Turner, he remains the top option for the LA Dodgers out there at third base. Of course, the Dodgers have a lefty-heavy lineup when it comes to where they currently stand, and Semien hasn't played any other position than shortstop. Marcus Semien's been considered, so I believe they're looking at bringing back Turner as an option there from the right side as things continue to iron out across the board. He certainly looks like the best fit back in that lineup moving forward. So we'll see where Justin Turner ends up if he does return to L.A. Scott Boras came out and said right-handed pitcher Jake Arrieta is going to throw for interested teams later this week. Arrieta's finished the last 2 seasons on the disabled list, one with an arm injury and this past year with a hamstring injury. He did not work out in Philadelphia after signing a 3-year, $75 million deal. He really struggled with injuries and was just very frustrating from a fan's perspective there. So we'll have to see how his bullpen goes and if he can get a 1-year deal somewhere to try to prove himself. I believe ultimately that's what he is looking at. We have Taijuan Walker. It's been reported that the Mariners haven't approached him with a serious offer quite yet. The Mariners, they got limited payroll flexibility, but it's been stated, quote, that they may have more than expected this offseason. So people kind of put 2 and 2 together there and thought Walker could return back to Seattle, where he had success before he was traded in the middle of this offseason. But his market has yet to ultimately materialize and really close on itself. So I think he's going to get a nice deal here moving forward. Next up, we have the Twins. The Twins have upped their 1-year offer to Nelson Cruz. The 40-year-old slugger may wait to see if the National League adopts the designated hitter role to see if his market could widen out moving forward. But, Minnesota bringing back Cruz, as he's been fantastic for them the past couple of years. I don't see why you wouldn't want to pay him a couple extra $1 million to hang around here. So the last couple of guys we'll talk about here are David Robertson, a relief pitcher who had Tommy John in 2019. He's going to throw a bullpen here in the next couple of weeks for a number of interested teams. Over his career, he was fantastic, but the last 2 years in Philadelphia just couldn't stay healthy and really struggled. But he's going to try to show some teams that he is healthy and coming back here. And then lastly, we have Yasiel Puig. It's been rumored that the Marlins and Royals could be interested in bringing in Puig, as he's bounced around the last handful of seasons across Major League Baseball. But the hot stove is getting warmer. Like I said, we're trying to crank it to broil, and it's slowly heating up here as we're getting close to spring training, only a few weeks away. It'll be fascinating to see if ultimately Bauer or Real Muto sign here in the next week. But that'll do it for today's episode. Once again, I appreciate you guys listening out there. Please rate and review the podcast. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Be a friend, tell a friend out there. Head to social media. You guys get it. I've asked you a couple of different times here. So I'm going to head on out here now. That'll do it for today's episode. Hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves this week. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Once again, I'll talk to you guys this Thursday. It should be a lot of fun. Enjoy your week out there, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.